Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, welcome to another in our series of verses of the Quran that matter to me for the public Quran campaign, trying to get the Quran into the public debate and discussion. And it's one thing that's often missing from the media. Even though they talk about Islam a lot, they don't often talk about the Quran. So we're trying to get this going with our public Quran campaign. And today joining us is Dr. Yvonne Ridley. She's a British journalist who was captured by the Taliban in 2001 and wrote a book about her experience. She later converted to Islam. She worked as a senior editor for the launch of Al Jazeera online English site in Qatar before returning to the UK to play central roles in Islam Channel and Press TV. She was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 for humanitarian work involving Syrian women prisoners and helping Rohingya refugees compile evidence of war crimes. So welcome to the Public Quran Campaign Ramadan series.
Thank you.
Okay, so I understand you have a verse that is particularly important to you. Please, can you just go ahead and tell us all about it?
Well, it is important to me, and it's very, very relevant, especially with regards today with elections coming up. And it's Ashura, which is chapter 42, and it's the 38th ayat. And I'm not even going to attempt to recite it in Arabic because with my Geordie accent, especially, I tend to mangle words. So please indulge me. Basically, it says that through believing in Allah's divine oneness and obeying Allah and establishing worship and perform the 5 daily prayers, when they want a certain matter of counsel, deliberate among themselves about it and then embark upon it. Now, that to me is quite clear that having a council, having discussion, having debate is all part of a democracy. And I know that there'll be people throwing their arms up in the air saying it's haram to vote. And I don't believe it is. And I think that Islam is compatible with democracy. And that's why this particular ayat resonates with me, because I am a political person. I do like to get involved in politics, and was quite distressed when I set out to investigate Islam in the early days to be told that it isn't compatible with democracy. And, oh, there's my grandfather clock going off, so we know that this isn't rehearsed. But this to me, this ayat is proof that while we defer to Allah, we also are very much allowed a democratic process of discussion and debate. And so that's what I get all from that one ayat.
Right, so there's a couple of verses of about consultation in the Quran. This is the one the surah is named after. What was the verse number again? Just top it.
It is verse 38.
38. I'm just seeing if I can get it to read out it refers to those who, yes, you said, did you read from a translation there?
Yes, I did.
Okay, which translation are you using, by the way?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. Gosh, I don't know.
Okay, doesn't matter. Anyway, there's this one. This verse is well known. It's it just talks about people, and it has the phrase, and I will do it in Arabic. وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَ بَيْنَهُمْ. Now, this is an interesting structure in Arabic, and because it's a noun and there's no verb for is in Arabic, so you just say the noun. So you say amruhum, their decisions or their affairs, shura bainahum, shura, consultation among themselves. And it's a definition of good people. It's a series of things in the verse about good people. So the interesting thing about this particular term, this phrase, is it's a form of saying, without the shura, there is no amr, there is no decision. So if you say amruhum, it's like saying al-hajj arafah, which means the hajj is arafah. If you do not do arafah, you have not done hajj. Okay, the same thing here. If you don't have shura, it is not a decision. So and there's all sorts of things we can take from it. I've thought about this a lot, and it's very interesting. But the idea generally is that because it's with the pronouns amruhum shura bainahum, it's very relevant to say, you know, you are not going to make decisions for other people, only if they're part of the shura. So this is the point. You're not bound by decisions that you're not part of.
Yes.
And that's a very emphatic. You could call it democratic, but it's not that we have power over someone else. We have power over ourselves, which is about in community accountability. You know, they have to make decisions for themselves. They can't blame someone else or anything. So yes, I generally entirely concur with your take on it as the pillar of what should be done within Islam. But unfortunately, to a large extent, this has been lost through political dynasties and so on in the past, and we need to revive it very much so.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the succession following the death of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that was very much a decision. It wasn't an inheritance. It wasn't dynastic. It was a decision that, and so you could say that was possibly the first major democratic decision that was made in Islam, was the emergence of Abu Bakr as the successor to Muhammad, peace be upon him. I know that will upset some people who believe that there should have been some form of dynastic succession, but I just think, you know, that in the 21st century, this one ayat proves that the Holy Quran is as relevant today as it was when it was first delivered over a 20-year period, 23-year period to Muhammad, peace be upon him. But there are, when you look around the world today, there are a number of Muslim majority countries that are democracies. And I think Indonesia is currently the largest Islamic democracy in the world. And while, as I said before, I think some people will reject the concept of democracy as because it's a Western thing that they see as incompatible with Islam, we just have to look around at our institutions and groups, even right down to the mosque committee, all these shuras that are all about consultation and having this democratic process while reflecting Islamic values. So to any Muslims listening to this today, I would say, you know, make sure you do vote in May, whether it's local council elections or where I'm living in Scotland, it's about forming a new government. You know, it is important that you take part in the discussion. So don't be afraid to vote and, you know, gather this knowledge to be able to challenge those who say voting is haram.
Well, you hear people, sometimes the more vocal people are actually a vocal minority. And so when I speak to people and just sampling people I meet, very, very few people have that sort of odd position. I think it's sometimes in the interest of people who are hostile to Islam to promote such voices, which is a shame. But, you know, if you look at the Quran, you base your understanding of Islam solidly by reflecting on what the Quran says and the example of the Prophet. The people, again, a little interesting example. I was at a talk some years ago, and by Rashid Ghanouchi, who you I'm sure are aware of.
Yes.
And it was in Good Street Mosque, and that was some years ago. And some people in the audience started to say, well, no, Islam and democracy, that's not right. Look, in the Hadith, you only have this couple of examples where the Prophet made decisions by shura and so on and so on. And it was roundly refuted, but I would just give this refutation, is that the Prophet is criticized by the disbelievers and they're quoted in the Quran as they say, the Prophet is nothing but, he's all ear, all right? Meaning he does nothing but listen to everyone all the time. and Allah defends him in the Quran and says, no, he wants what's for your benefit, and it's no problem that he's listening to you all the time. That's really not a problem. And another reference to shura in the Quran, which is very interesting, is there's a talk about when a decision has been made, then consult with the people and put your trust in Allah and take the decision. And it says also, I'm paraphrasing, of course, it also says, and pray for their forgiveness. So who is the Prophet being told to pray for forgiveness? For the people who are rudely coming up to him, telling him what he ought to do.
Yes, wow.
And it's right, if you look at the context of that, that's actually in the midst of a sort of a war type situation. So it's like, you don't just sacrifice your democratic instincts on, because you need to make urgent decisions and so on. It's still very important to listen to people and get their opinions, even in those situations. So the Quran is fundamentally disproves any kind of assertion that shura was a selective thing and that you really need to get your rules by much other ways. No, shura is the basis. It's the foundation of all agreements, and that is the foundation of we would say urf in Arabic. It's basically the rules by which we say that's ma'ruf, that's known, that's accepted, that's the rules by which we live, and those are agreements which are accepted. And without that, we don't have law. Law is agreement. So, well, I think sometimes people talk and worry about the few handful of people who go around saying voting is haram. There's a few people, and I'm sure they are absolutely on the fringes of the majority of people.
Well, they probably are on the fringes, but the trouble is they are very vocal, and these are the ones that attract the headlines, which are hostile or end up being hostile to Islam. And it is such a shame. But unfortunately, you look at the leader of the British government today, Boris Johnson, who's certainly said some extremely Islamophobic things in the past, and his demonizing of women who wear the niqab, calling them bank robbers and letterboxes. I know I'm paraphrasing there. So you can understand why people feel alienated from politics. But instead of retreating into an Islamic bubble and saying haram, 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 I do wish that they would not retreat into an Islamic bubble and stand up more for what Islam is about, but do it in a nice and peaceful way.
Of course, the media wouldn't cover that.
No, absolutely not. The media love shouters.
Oh, they love shouters, and this is why I've kind of I call it sometimes the baby pigeon problem. It's like, where are all the baby pigeons? I never hear them, I never see them, but they must exist. I mean, they must exist somewhere, but you don't see them, and you tend to judge reality by what you see, and there's a lot of reality that you don't see, and the media is giving you a very particular perspective all the time. And so if you want to know truth, you have to do your own kind of investigations and not rely on the headlines and not rely on the kind of the percentage of stories that come across your bow, so to speak. So it's we can worry a lot, and as we work in you especially work in the media, it's something that we worry about. But I think people, once they realize that reality and perception are not always the same thing, and they need to do their own research and come up to some more sound conclusions. And I think that's the case with most people, and yourself particularly, after you had your certain impressions and you said, I will investigate Islam, and you went off and did your own investigations. I encourage everyone to do their own investigations and not take anything from anyone without checking things properly.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's wonderful when people say, that they have a sheikh that they follow or a scholar. But I also think that it's healthy to investigate for yourself and then get these learned people to help you do the interpretations, but also not just listen to one voice. In the early days when I started to look at Islam, I went right from the fringes right into the center to try and understand where these verses, what these verses meant. And then I would form my own opinion, having listened to a lot of learned people, as I say, from the fringes to the center. The one word that I hate is moderate, and why there is this drive to turn us all into moderate Muslims is beyond me, because if you think about the word moderate, it's sort of average, isn't it? It's neither one thing nor another. And I just think if parents went to their school and the teacher said, oh yes, your son or your daughter, they're a moderate student, you'd be furious. You'd think, well, no, I want them to be extremely good at maths, extremely good at physics, chemistry, English, history. Nobody wants to be moderate, at something. But I think that the word that we should be looking for, from my own experience with Islam, is balance. And speaking from my personal experience, I sort of went in, read as much as I could and educate myself about Islam, and thought, yes, this is the religion for me, and dived in as a brand new Muslim. And you tend to swing like a pendulum, and you're told music is haram. Oh right, I must switch off the radio. And then you look at your old music albums. One of my favorites was Cat Stevens, and his voice has to be God-given. So then you switch the radio back on and you're swinging, but eventually you center and you get a balance. And that, to me, is what we should be striving for, to get this balance where we are very comfortable with our faith, and very comfortable in our prayers and dialogue with Allah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Yvonne, for that wonderful description of your choice of verse. I think it's an important verse for many Muslims, and one they really need to pay a lot more attention to, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.